Yeah, so Soledar's not particularly important in itself. It's a small salt mining town in the east of the country in this area, this province called Donetsk, part of the Donbas, part of the area that Russia has already claimed to have annexed. Its symbolic importance is that it, provides a victory to Russia after these 6 months of being on the back foot, some significant defeats in Kharkiv and Kherson. So they really want to get this town to say, we are still pushing forward. The strategic significance is whether they can use this small gain to push further gains in Donetsk, because they to have any sort of victory in this war, they have to at least have control over these two provinces that they've been claiming since 2014. They have pretty much all of one of the provinces, Luhansk, the other of these two provinces that we call the Donbas. They have half of Donetsk, and this is their first sort of substantial gain in that area since since the summer of last year. So if they can consolidate this town, Soledar, which they do seem to have pretty much got control of most of anyway, and move on to the major towns of Bakhmut to the south and Kramatorsk and where I am at the moment, and Sloviansk just to the west of there, then they can at least say they've achieved something with this war.
And from where you are, what is happening there? What is the sense you're getting of, I suppose, amid this information noise, as Ukraine has described it? What are you able to determine as to progress or otherwise for either side where you are?
Well, it's pretty clear that the Russians have taken most of this town of Soledar, which is just to the east of here. I'll be heading off to see what's what's happening as near the front as we can get in a minute. Now that the sun has well, not the sun, but the dawn has broken here. But it's pretty clear from what we saw last night, what other people saw, that the Ukrainians were in a fairly organized retreat from the front lines in Soledar. They were in patches of the western half of the city until yesterday morning. They do seem to have given up some of those patches of territory during the course of the day yesterday. Soldiers were seen in buses coming away from the front line. So a fairly organized withdrawal, it would seem.
Yeah. What about reports, taking this from The Guardian this morning? Ukraine is confident Britain will announce its plans to send about 10 Challenger 2 tanks to Kyiv shortly, a move that it hopes will help Germany finally allow its Leopard 2s to be re-exported to Ukraine. What do we understand about the kind of the support from other nations at this point?
Yeah, it's this incremental involvement of Western weaponry to Ukraine. If you remember, at the beginning of the war, there was a lot of concern about escalation, whatever that meant. There was no desire by NATO or the West to directly confront the Russians. So the question was, obviously we were apparently not going to send our own troops. So the question is, what weapons could we send? And at first there was this idea that sending tanks would be a escalation that might annoy Putin and get him to try and involve us in the war. There's this sense now that Putin can't re-escalate this war, having suffered a couple of defeats last year, and that therefore the West can send somewhat heavier weaponry. We sent very accurate artillery from the middle of last year, these HIMARS and other similar long-range, highly accurate artillery. So tanks would be the logical next step. Tanks have not been a great success in the war so far, but that's because the Russians have apparently poorer grade tanks that have been very vulnerable to drone strikes. The sense on the Ukrainian side and amongst the Western allies is that good tanks could make a difference on the front line. Germany is still hesitant. It's always been the most cautious of the Western allies of Ukraine, Western friends that are helping it, about sending heavy weaponry. And the Leopard 2, which is probably the best tank that's being discussed in the European field. is a German tank, and if you make highly advanced weaponry, you do have a control over where the end use is, as they call it, where it's sent. So Germany can veto Poland. Poland is thinking of sending some of its Leopard tanks. We're apparently sending some of our Challenger tanks. That's what Ukraine wants, and then it seems that some sort of agreement is being worked out between these, particularly European countries, in coordination with Ukraine and the US.